Happy Kara no Kyokai collab event, everyone. Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for the only Shiki that will ever make it into Fate Grand Order, Ryougi Shiki Saber. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 5-star servants. I also have a spotlight up on the welfare servant for this event, Assassin Shiki, linked in the description below, so do check that out right after this. Now, on to Shiki's stats. Shiki has a max HP of 15,453, which is the highest among all 5-star sabers and among the top 5 highest HP stats of all these servants. Her attack of 10,721, however, is the lowest among all 5-star sabers and among the lowest attack stats of all 5 stars in general. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Mystic Eyes of Depth Perception rank C, which applies Ignore Invincibility for 1 turn, increases her own arch card effectiveness for 1 turn between 25 and 40%, and decreases the def resist of all enemies for 1 turn between 60 to 80%, both depending on level. Her second skill is Shining Cloud rank B, which increases her attack for 3 turns between 15 to 25%, and increases her mental debuff resist for 3 turns between 18 to 36%, both depending on level. And finally, her last skill is Yin Yang rank A, which restores her HP between 2,000 to 5,000 depending on level, at the cost of 10% Noble Phantasm gauge. Moving on to her passives, she has Magic Resistance rank A, which increases debuff resist by 20%, Independent Manifestation rank C, which increases her crit strength by 6%, def resist by 6%, and mental debuff resist by 6%. And finally, she has Connection to the Root rank A, which increases her buster, arts, and quick card effectiveness all by 6%. Moving on to her deck and Noble Phantasm, Shiki has a light arts deck with quick arts, buster, and an arts Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Muki Shiki Kara no Kyokai, which deals heavy damage to all enemies that ignores defense with between a 450 and 750% damage modifier, depending on level. It also has between a 60 to 100% chance to insta-kill depending on overcharge, and removes debuffs from all allies. Taking a closer look at her deck, her quick card hits 4 times, her arch card hits twice, her buster hits once, and her extra hits 4 times. She has a Noble Phantasm gain rate of 0.84% and a star rate of 9.9%. This effectively means that she's decent at Noble Phantasm gain just due to having 4 hits on her extra and 2 arts cards, and slightly above average star generating thanks to the 4-hit quick card and extra. Saber Shiki's fundamentally a different servant than anyone we've seen so far, in that she's built around inflicting instant death. There are servants with instant death effects on their Noble Phantasms, but none of them are as efficient at proccing it as Shiki. And this is evident immediately from her first skill, Mystic Eyes of Depth Perception, a powerful skill that grants not only a strong arch buff, but also makes enemies more susceptible to death. This is Shiki's bread and butter skill, and it's what enables her whole strategy to work. The arch buff is great, and the def resist decrease is massive, not to mention it also bypasses any evade or invincibility the enemy uses, so it always hits. And this is her best skill for sure. And that's saying something given how strong her other skills are too. Shining Cloud provides a decently strong attack buff with a short cooldown, although the mental debuff resist is ultimately pointless unfortunately, and Yin Yang provides Shiki with one of the best heals in the game. At the cost of only 10% Noble Phantasm charge, you have a 5000 HP heal on a 4-turn cooldown. With the Atlas Mystic Code and Tamamo, this skill can be very easily abused. Shiki's Noble Phantasm gain is pretty good, so 10% Noble Phantasm charge is nothing, and the demerit might as well not even exist. This skill makes her very strong as a staller or semi-tank, and takes full advantage of her massive health. If you level this skill, it'll be pretty difficult to kill Shiki outside of a one-shot. Still, you should max Mystic Eyes first since it is essential to using her Noble Phantasm, then go for Yin and Yang, and then Shining Cloud. Shiki has some killer skills, and even her passives are noteworthy. Connection to the Root especially gives her a noticeable boost to not only her overall damage, but her card effectiveness as well, i.e. more crit stars and Noble Phantasm gain. Shiki's Noble Phantasm is an AoE Arch Noble Phantasm that, while doing a little damage, has a very high chance to insta-kill and has decent utility in the form of debuff removal for your allies. But while Saber Shiki may have some really good skills, she has 2 major flaws. The first major flaw is her damage. her Noble Phantasm does laughable damage. The modifier is very low on it, and it doesn't get any better given that she doesn't have an interlude. For reference, even Theon post-interlude has a higher damage modifier on his Noble Phantasm than Saber Shiki does. And while you might think that her low damage will be offset by her strong arts and attack buff, it isn't, because her attack is just so incredibly low for a 5-star. Basically, all of Shiki's buffs just improve Shiki's damage from being horrendously bad to just being below average. Which is why, in my opinion, you should prioritize Yin Yang over Shining Cloud to play to her strength, which is clearly her HP. But Shiki's not built for damage, she's built to insta-kill. And that's her second major flaw. Insta-kill is the most unreliable and impossible to trigger status effect in the game. Enemy bosses and servants will almost never die to insta-kill. If you're lucky, you can get it to work against some shadow servants and mini-bosses, but even then, it's completely unreliable. The only time Shiki's insta-kill will be useful is for farming trash mobs and events, and for farming EXP. So despite the really cool skills, Shiki really only works as a farming servant, or it's semi-tank. As for team comp, Saber Shiki is an arch servant through and through, so she pairs perfectly with supports like Waver, Nero Bride, Hans, and Tamamo, who can make up just a bit for her low attack, and in Tamamo's case especially, she can turn Shiki into a powerful heal-spamming tank. Speaking of which, pairing her with other tanks and healers like Mosh, George, Marie, Martha, Media Lily, and Jean make for a fantastic stall team. Finally, she also pairs well with Caesar and Arturia if you need to do some Lancer farming, since they can both buff her. Her Bondcraft Essence Muga Shiki Kosara Tayu increases the arts effectiveness of all allies by 15%. This isn't bad if you're building an arts team, but Shiki benefits more from craft essences that boost her damage rather than support others. As such, your best bets for craft essences are Formal Craft, Black Grail, and Heaven's Feel, since all of them will give a nice boost to her Noble Phantasm damage, and she has more than enough healing to offset the Black Grail damage. If you're using her in a stall team, then Maid in Halloween, Bride Training, and Street Choco Maid are fantastic, and Street Choco Maid in particular is very strong on her. And of course, go with Halloween Princess or Kaleidoscope for farming, or if you have her on your support list. Overall, I think Saber Shiki gets an unnecessarily bad rep. She has some fantastic skills and one of the best heals in the game. She's near immortal in the right team, and is one of the best farming servants in the game, and let's be honest, she has one of the best sprites in the game too. But she definitely isn't a top tier servant either. Her damage is abysmal, she lacks a Noble Phantasm charge which would help a lot with farming, and the insta-kill gimmick that she's built around is just really bad and impossible to rely on in any meaningful fights. So overall, she gets a B- from me. I think she's usable as a 5-star and actually works really well in stall teams, but she's on the short list of servants who desperately needs a strengthening quest and an interlude. If her Noble Phantasm was just upgraded, and if she got a small buff to her Shining Cloud skill, she would be a lot better as an offensive servant. And those are my thoughts on Saber Shiki. A little below average for a 5-star, but not as bad as some people make her out to be. Let me know what you think, and if you plan on rolling for her in the comments below. Also, please check out the spotlight for Assassin Shiki, the event welfare servant, as well as my Kara no Kyokai event guide, both linked in the description and on screen right now. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you really enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. If you haven't already, please join the party over at our Discord and follow us on Twitter. With all that said, I'll see you all next time. Sober Oni, signing out. Later.